In this video, I want to share a massive improvement that occurred for me on carnivore that I haven't talked about before. And as part of that, I want to share my entire journey. The reason for that is I've had people tell me recently that although they can find videos with me talking about some of my journey here and there in various interviews and on my channel, there's no one place that they can hear my whole story. And so in this video, you'll hear some things that you've heard before, but a lot of things that you haven't. So to start, one of the defining parts of my journey was the stroke that I had at age 17, specifically a subarachnoid hemorrhage. I went to bed on a Sunday evening in 1992. When I woke up on Monday morning, I felt awful. I felt like I had some kind of really bad hangover. You know, the kind of hangover you get if you've been drinking so much that in the morning you've got a hangover, but you're actually still drunk as well. So your coordination, your balance is off, everything's out of whack. But as a 17-year-old, you tend not to take things as seriously as you do as you move into adulthood. And I just got up, thought it was a virus, shrugged it off, thought, I'll have a shower, I'll feel better after the shower. It didn't really feel much better after the shower, but I just soldiered on and I got ready and left for work. And yes, I was already working full-time at the age of 17, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, I traveled on the train for 1 hour to get to work, arrived at the office, opened up, started moving about the office, doing my normal daily tasks, and realized at that point there was something wrong. I was having trouble navigating around things in the office, tripped over a box, and decided there's something wrong. So, as I was the only one there, I locked the office up again and I went back to the station to go home. I traveled the hour or so to get home, and by the time I arrived, things had deteriorated. The right side of my body wasn't working anymore, and walking home from the train station was basically me dragging the right side of my body behind me. I was still living at home at the time, so my mother put me in the car, took me to the doctor. The doctor examined me, he did all the things, he checked everything, he was smacking my knee with a hammer, he was looking in my eye with a torch, and he concluded that I had gastro. He told me to take some Panadol, fluids, and rest. Things got increasingly worse over the next few hours, and I lost what little control I had left in my right hand, and so we went to another doctor for a second opinion. That doctor didn't have to do any examination at all. He looked at my face, and he said to my parents, "Take him to the emergency room right now. We don't have time to wait for an ambulance. There's something going on in his brain." We rushed to hospital. They arranged some CTs, and the next day they gave me the bad news. You've got a brain aneurysm, it ruptured, and that's why you're experiencing the stroke symptoms. You're fortunate, the aneurysm clotted very quickly, and that's why you're still alive. Because it had clotted, I was deemed to be not an emergency case, and so I spent a month, 2 months, I can't remember exactly, in hospital waiting for an operation. When I eventually had the operation, they cut into my head and they were going to clip the aneurysm. Unfortunately, once they opened me up, they couldn't reach the aneurysm, so they stitched me back up and I had the long recovery from that. They didn't know what to do from that point, but my neurosurgeon went away and did some research. And remember, the internet wasn't around at this point. So he did some manual research. And a few days to a week later, he came back and said, there is some surgery you can have. It's still being tested, but that's really the only option you've got. So from there, I flew to the other side of the country, was admitted to the only hospital that was trialing this procedure. And instead of trying to clip the aneurysm, they went in through an artery in my leg and they threaded a catheter up through my artery into my brain and they filled the aneurysm with platinum coils. The platinum coils occluded the aneurysm and everything was back to normal. And to be honest, I wish I'd just gone straight for this operation, because even after you've had this operation, your recovery time is nothing, maybe a few days. And I'm happy to say that this operation is now in widespread use. So that's one of the defining points of my journey. And one of the reason it really defines a lot of my life thereafter is because after you've had a stroke, you have a lot of residual problems. And often it's down one side of your body. And for me, my right side is weaker than my left. My left has actually got a lot stronger to compensate. But anyway, this becomes important later on. While all this was going on, I discovered a magic pill when I was 15 years old. A magic pill that would turn my shyness into confidence. And that magic pill was alcohol. When I was working a part-time job after school at McDonald's as a 15-year-old, I would get invited to parties sometimes. And I agreed to go because I liked the people I was working with, but I was very, very shy. And maybe the first or second party I went to, there was alcohol there. And I tried my first can of vodka and orange. And something came over me almost immediately. The shyness that I experienced, the inability to engage in a conversation, the inability to talk about myself disappeared. And so I think that night I probably drank 2 or 3 vodka and orange and didn't feel good the next day, but that night had showed me something. I didn't have to be shy. And I now had the switch to turn the shyness off. And this meant that going through my later teenage years, I was able to use this switch to turn the confidence on whenever I felt I needed to. This was interrupted when I had the stroke because I was admitted to hospital, and then after the surgery, they had to put me on some drugs that meant that I couldn't drink alcohol with them, or there would be serious side effects. But when I resumed drinking, I did it in earnest. At the age of 19, I moved interstate. And I was very lucky when I moved to find a job very quickly. And it was a job that suited me perfectly. It was in IT, and to this point, I'd been programming since I was 10 years old. So it suited me perfectly. So I fitted into this job, and they seemed quite happy with my performance. And because I was living on my own really for the first time, and I'd moved interstate and I was away from everyone, I was very cautious about everything. And one of the things I've been cautious about was drinking. And living on my own, I needed to rely on, I had no one to rely on. So if I had to drive somewhere, it was me. I couldn't ask someone else for a lift. So I'd calmed down on the drinking. And so I was kind of shy. And then about 6 months into working for this company, they told me they were expanding overseas. And they wanted me to help them do that. And so after working there for just 6 months, I found myself being sent to London on an assignment. And as a 19, 20-year-old, this was an amazing opportunity for me. So I found myself living in London with other people from the same office that had also come over from Australia. And when you're traveling and working overseas and you don't have any real responsibilities, you're not looking after a family, you don't have to worry about mortgages and saving for things, you just do whatever you can to enjoy yourself. And of course, all of us would work all day and then we would go out to the pub in the evening. And that was a pattern we followed every single day. And so every single day, my confidence was up, but my dependency on alcohol was increasing. And I traveled with this company. I was in London, then I was in Hong Kong, then I was back to Australia, then I was out to South Africa, then back to Australia, then South Africa again, and then to LA. And it's just all over the place. And with each move, you're meeting new people. And each opportunity to meet new people meant I had to get out of my comfort zone. And so more and more and more alcohol. And as much as I enjoyed the 3 years working for this company, there were often sober moments where I kind of thought to myself, is this what my whole life is going to be like? Again, as much as I enjoyed it, what would happen if I was in my 30s doing the same thing, in my 40s doing the same thing, in my 50s doing the same thing? And so I resigned from that company and moved back to Australia. I was going to move back to Australia and I was going to kind of settle down and start thinking about, the mortgage and meeting someone and all that kind of thing. But what I'd actually done is put myself into the exact same position I'd been in multiple times working for this company. I'd moved back to Australia and put myself in a position where I'm getting to know people again. I'm having to get out there and look for jobs and network with people and all of that kind of thing. And so the dependency on alcohol just continued. And this is where it really started to spiral out of control. Because when you're living back in Australia and the public transport is not so good, especially at night, so you can't go out somewhere, drink, and then just jump on a train or a bus easily. And you can't obviously drink and drive. So I got used to drinking at home, which is a pattern that continued from that point on. So at this point, it's 1998. I'm back in Australia. I'm drinking way more than I should be every day. I'm eating much more than I should be every day. And this is driven by lots of different things. But one of the things that was a driving factor for the eating was I've moved back. I've upended my whole world, everything I've known for the last 3 years. All the friendships I'd made are basically gone because everyone's overseas. I'm now back in Australia doing a job that I don't like for a company that I didn't particularly enjoy working for. And so the eating increases, the soothing, the comfort eating increases, and of course the drinking increases at a level alongside that. And I'm feeling really bad about myself. This goes on for a number of years. And then in 2001, I discover something. I discover the Atkins diet. There's a lot of stuff being shown on TV about it at the time, and people talking about these amazing results that they're getting with it. And I think, wow, I've tried dieting a lot throughout my life. I've always had this kind of pot belly. Maybe this could work for me as well. I've tried everything else. Nothing has got rid of the belly. Nothing's made me feel good. Maybe I'll give it a try. So I went out and I bought the Atkins New Diet Revolution book. And I didn't read the whole book. I probably read about halfway, and I at least got up to having an understanding of the first stage of Atkins, which is called the induction phase. And I thought, this sounds amazing. So I went out and I bought lots of meat, I bought lots of eggs, I bought blocks of cheese. And while I was doing Atkins, I was eating 3 meals a day, and I was, eating the bacon and eggs and still eating chicken breast and eating all that stuff. And I think on the induction phase, it's like you just are meant to eat a few leafy greens each day. And I didn't even eat that. So I was basically doing carnivore at this point. But for the most part, I was doing a pretty lean version of carnivore. So one of the things I found about my Atkins experience is I was always hungry. I was always thinking about food. And so most people that are doing a high fat, low carb approach to eating or a regular style of carnivore don't get hungry a lot. but I was hungry all the time. And I realize now it's because I wasn't eating fat. But I did lose a lot of weight and I did feel better. And one of the things that was a real standout for me was I found I had so much more self control than I'd ever had in my life. And at this stage, I was probably about 25 years old, around there. And in my 25 years, I'd never experienced this amount of self control. And I'd never experienced this lack of impulsivity. And that's going to be important later. So I did this Atkins experiment for about 3 months. And I ended up giving up because I think part of it was because I was feeling hungry all the time. And the other side of it was every day on the news, they had a negative story about Atkins. When I found out about it and I'd purchased that book, that was just after the book had been republished. And so it was back in the mainstream and everyone was thinking about it. And the news media obviously realized they could get eyeballs if they were talking about it all the time. So they had people on every day debunking it, people from universities and doctors and all that kind of thing saying, you need carbohydrates and you shouldn't be restricting carbohydrates. You should be eating pasta and you should be eating bread and all this kind of thing. And so there was all that kind of pressure, like every day on the news, they were telling me it's bad for you. And the other thing was, I'd changed jobs at this point, and I was working for a bank at this stage. And my boss at the time, even though we're in IT, his training was as a nutritionist. And every day he would see me eating my chicken or my block of cheese or my canned tuna or whatever I had with me. And he realized that I wasn't eating any carbohydrate. And every time he saw me eating, he was trying to convince me I was doing something wrong. And so at this point, when I was getting all this pressure from what I was seeing on the news, and then this nutritionist is telling me that what I'm doing is bad. And at that point in my life, I had no reason to distrust any information a nutritionist was telling me. I decided that's it, I'm going to give up. And the decision was easy because I was hungry all the time, right? So if you're hungry all the time and someone says, look, you don't have to restrict the types of food you're eating, you can eat the muffins. That's your body needs that. It's like, okay, well, that's easy enough to give up. So I did. But over the next 20 years, I was on and off Atkins and then on keto and that kind of thing. And every time I noticed positive changes in my body, whether it was weight loss, clearer thinking, and this self control and lack of impulsivity always came back. So, fast forward to June of 2022, I went to see my doctor, and he told me two things. You are pre diabetic, and you have an alcohol problem you need to get under control. Spoiler alert, I knew I had an alcohol problem that I needed to get under control. And though it was quite jarring to hear about the prediabetes, I wasn't surprised that I was, because I was a carbohydrate addict. The doctor wanted to address the alcohol problem first, and he wanted to address it using drugs that had particularly bad side effects. Now, I've never been a fan of medications, and this goes back to when I was a lot younger, when I used to have to go to the doctor every week or every month, I can't remember which, to get injections for my allergy. I had really bad hay fever, and so I had to get these injections to control and improve my response to the grasses that I was allergic to. And it made absolutely no difference at all. It was a complete waste of time. I just remember feeling as a kid, why am I wasting time sitting in the doctor's waiting room just to get these injections, which are doing nothing? And the whole time I was being gaslighted by the doctors and nurses saying, you seem to be better. It looks like you're not sneezing as much. It looks like your nose isn't as blocked as it usually, or it used to be. And the whole time I knew I felt just as bad all the time. And so, because of that kind of thing, I've never been a fan of medication. The drug the doctor wanted to put me on to control my alcohol consumption, I wasn't convinced it would work because of my history with medication. And also, it had the side effect of death. So I didn't particularly like that side effect. Seemed very final to me. So I said to the doctor, "Look, let me try and deal with this on my own. If I don't have success with it on my own, I'll come back and see you." And so I thought back to the success I'd had with Atkins and keto over the years, with self control and reduced impulsivity. And I thought, well, you know, if anything is going to help me, it's self control and reducing impulses. And so I put myself on keto. Unfortunately, going on to keto made me realize that plants were indeed trying to kill me. And that was because prior to going keto this time, my diet had been pretty bad and hadn't incorporated any good food, any veggies. And as I've mentioned in the past, when I've done Atkins and keto, it's really been pretty much carnivore, because why you getting the results without the veggies? Why eat them? And I was young and I wasn't thinking at those points, I need to get my vitamin C, I need to get these things. So I wasn't really in a frame of mind where I was prioritizing veggies. It was, I can worry about that later. So anyway, doing keto this time, realized plants weren't agreeing with me. And these assassination attempts by the plants basically involved me being in the bathroom all the time. And of course, I wasn't happy about this, and this was happening after every meal. And initially, I thought it was the meat. And so, after I started doing a little bit of research, found some videos by Ken Berry, I realized the vegetables I was eating were actually the problem. And not being married to the veggies wasn't really a big issue to try eating without them. So, decided to go for a week or so without the veggies and see what happened. And of course, instantly problem goes away. And now keto is carnivore. And so since June 2022, I've been carnivore. And there've been lots of changes, lots of things that I've discussed before. The balance problem I had on my right side, the strength problem I had on my right side, the reaction times that I had, reaction time problems I had on my right side have started to improve and continue to improve, although it's a slow process and it's never going to be the same as my left side. But those problems from the stroke have begun to improve. But the biggest thing for me was the arthritis in my left knee just vanishing. This is amazing because it had been a problem that had been plaguing me for a couple of years. And it was just a feeling of, okay, I'm really getting old now. I've done this damage to my body. I'm getting old. I'm aging. Everything's deteriorating. This is my life now. And for the arthritis just to vanish was amazing. Now, I've experienced other improvements as well, like most people, weight loss, better sleep, more energy, clearer thinking, things like that. But there's one thing that I don't talk about. I certainly haven't talked about enough on my channel that has improved for me. Now, I've done over 1,300 interviews now. And one of the pieces of feedback I get from people is that you're a really good listener. You allow people to tell their stories and you ask questions when something needs to be elaborated on or you're interested in a particular thing, but you listen and you let them share their story. And I've got to tell you that actually that's carnivore, because prior to carnivore, for me, listening was just waiting to speak. So, had I tried to do interviews with people, host interviews with people 4 years ago, when they were talking, all I would have been thinking is, what am I going to say next? Quick, think, what are you going to say when it's your turn to talk? Hang on, are they finishing now? Is it your turn to talk yet? And like this kind of thing. Like it was just a process of not really listening to the person and thinking about what I was going to say next so that there wasn't a lull in the conversation. And the funny thing is, it's so counterintuitive because what better way to create lulls in the conversation than not actually be listening to what the other person is saying? Anyway, the point is that people often talk about the carnivore calm and how you don't have the food noise, you don't have all the almost rioting going on in your head minute after minute after minute throughout the day, because now that you're not eating the sugar, you're not eating all the foods that become sugar, your body just can get back to doing what it's meant to do. And your mind gets back to functioning, I guess, in a proper state. And so now when someone's talking, I can actually listen to them and I can actually hear what they're saying. And I don't have that constant like mess going on in my head, that constant riot going on in my head with all different things happening at the same time and trying to focus on a conversation when my mind's pulling me in all different directions about whether it's food or what you've got to do later or what you've got to do, what you forgot to do before, or what are you going to say next? I don't have all that going on now. And I think for me, that's been a massive benefit with carnivore is I'm actually more conscious of what's going on around me and I'm not in my head all the time. And so the reason I started this channel is because I was angry. About 4 months into doing carnivore, I realized that, you know, we've been lied to about food and what we should actually be eating. And I've kind of known this for 2 decades because every time I went back to eating in a way where I was excluding most or all carbohydrates, I felt better. And so I kind of started the channel as a way of just adding my voice to the mix and saying, we need to stop following this mainstream advice if it's not working for us. And when you look at the rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease and other chronic conditions, the standard way of eating is obviously not working for us. So I wanted to add my voice to that. And what that's evolved into is a platform where other carnivores can share their story. And that helps us to get the message out there that carnivore is indeed an appropriate way to eat and can help you manage or perhaps reverse chronic conditions that you're suffering from. And it also acts as a really great way of motivating people who are already doing carnivore. Because let's face it, we all go through stressful times. We all have moments where we might think, I'll have that cake, I'll have that packet of chips, I'll have that chocolate bar, I'll have that glass of beer. And be able to tune in and listen to someone else's story can be really motivating and can be a way of just giving you that few minutes to not think about the junk food that you were considering eating and kind of build that resolve to go, I'm gonna stick with it for another day. I'm gonna put off those feelings and stick with it for another day. And so I'd like to invite you to come on and share your story. If you'd like to share, it's really simple. All you need to do is send me an email to realzerocarb@gmail.com. I'll get back to you and we'll work out a time that suits you. And just remember, when you come on, we won't be live. It'll be pre-recorded and edited before going on YouTube, so there's no pressure. So I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot me an email to realzerocarb@gmail.com. And if you want to discover how we got so sick in the first place, watch this video next.